Hello and welcome. The goal of this podcast is to get listeners connected with others in the sports industry because they say it's all about who you know, and now you know us. Well, hello and welcome, everybody. This is your host, Connor Shank, and today you are getting to know Greyson Allen. Thanks for joining us today, Greyson.
No, I appreciate the time. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And like always, everyone, thanks for listening and joining in today. And we've got a great episode, I guess, start to season 4, rather. Grayson is the director of talent acquisition at Peak Sports Management, located there in the Dallas, Texas area, I believe. And he's got a bunch of experience. He is undergrad and grad degree, both in the sports realm. And so, Grayson, I just kind of wanted to start there to begin. So obviously you kind of double dip there at Texas A&M Commerce, I believe, with the sports and rec degree, and then the master's in international sports management. So it seems like at a college age, younger age, you had your mind on the sports industry, jobs in there. So what kind of drew you to that, and maybe talk a little bit about the degrees and why that route early on.
Yeah, well, to kind of pose the question of like why the sport industry, like why not?
Right.
We always grew up, if you're a sports fan anyway, whether you go into it or not, like sports, in my opinion, is like one of the international languages. Like
Yep.
you can have different religions, different backgrounds, different languages, whatever it is. And if you put like two rocks next to each other on one side, two rocks on the other side, and you put a ball, like someone's going to start kicking it through as if it's a goal, right? So it's such a huge part of my life and has always been a huge part of my life, but so many others. And so I always go back to when you're a kid going to a basketball game, an NBA, MLB, NFL game, there's kind of like this imaginary wall that you can't pass to step on that field. Like that's for the celebrities, that's for the players, that's for the important people. And so you always kind of dream about being a part of that in some way, shape, or form. And so for me, always playing sports in middle school, elementary school, high school, almost doing it in college, to always being the kid that wakes up every morning at 7 a.m. to watch Sports Center so I can remember everything and then talk about it at school. I was always so infatuated with that industry. I just was like, how do I get a part of it? And so when I started doing my degree path, I started in business, really enjoyed that concept of it, but it just didn't really scratch the itch for me. I didn't like, I guess, the huge formal getting stuck in an office all day in a cubicle all day kind of environment. And not everything is like that, but that's kind of how I perceived it. So
Right.
when I learned about sport management and I can take that and I get to be a part of the industry, I get to learn about it, was just something I just knew I had to get a part of. So once I did, started learning more at Texas A&M Commerce through my bachelor's and through my master's, and just opening more doors and opening my eyes to other stuff. It was kind of a no-brainer at that point. Getting to see how I can be a part of a sporting organization. I can impact that organization. I can impact fans. I can impact a number of different ways while also getting to be the person that gets to be a part of that environment every day and take my love of sports and connect it with that. So it's always that kind of journey of, I think this is what I want to get into. And as you get into it, it just kind of feeds that fire and feeds it more and more and more. And then it's like, now I got to get out there and work. And when you start working, you're like, I got to do more and more. One of my first ever opportunities was working with Peak on the Peak event side, where we run baseball tournaments as one part of our company. But I was tasked with taking care of Stanford's baseball team. And at 3 a.m, I had 6 insanely heavy bags of dirty laundry in the back of my car that I was taking to the stadium to get done. And I cannot tell you that I was cheesing harder than anybody I think I've ever seen. I was so happy to have Stanford's dirty laundry in the back of my car because I was like, this is so cool. Like I'm finally getting to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
And that just, I think, launched me for the short part so far, but the start of my career and where I've been now.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think a lot of the listeners and viewers can kind of align with some of what you said there, and kind of growing up, you're into sports, people play sports, and they realize, okay, how am I gonna, get into this field? And
Yep.
I feel like that's a kind of a similar background. So for like I said, a lot of the viewers and listeners can connect with that. I mean, and then going forward with the kind of how you broke into the sports industry, I think you kind of touched on it a little bit, but was the position there with Peak, like I think it was an internship or whatnot.
Mhm.
Did you kind of have any others that led you into the Peak, or were you anything else in the sports industry before that position?
Not a whole lot. I mean, I was very involved in college, stuff in campus rec with clubs. I
Yep.
was a part of Greek life. So I did a lot of these smaller things that kind of helped hone my skills and my characteristic traits and kind of get me out of my shell a little bit, which I think helped a lot.
Mhm.
which I highly recommend for anybody that's still a college student. There's never a time where you can say, oh, I don't have enough experience. You can always go do something, always do more, always get better. There's always something out there, whether it's a volunteer opportunity or something with a club or something on campus or outside of campus. But doing all that kind of helped me hone my skills. And then from that, I just started reaching out to people. Like I would find people on LinkedIn, I would go to career fairs and just networking and saying, hey, this is who I am. I want to get to know you. What do you
Mhm.
do? I'm trying to learn more. What do you love about your job? What do you hate about your job? And just trying to get more insight in the industry. And so by doing that, it allowed me to meet a lot of people in pro sports, minor league sports, third party companies like Peak. And so once I connected with Peak and they were a part of my sport management society at Commerce,
Gotcha.
that let me get to know them on more of a personal level. They had some opportunities with their baseball tournaments. I came out. That first opportunity just was for me to say, hey, I'm going to work my butt off over these 3 days. I don't care if it's 12 hours, 14 hours, 24 hours. I'm going to work my butt off, meet everybody I can, get to know everybody, make sure they know me. And basically, after doing that over about 2 weekends, they asked me to come back and do an internship at their headquarters here in Dallas, focusing on their collegiate sponsorship and ticket sales side, as well as some on their tournament side. The internship kind of again was me saying, hey, like this is my only opportunity right now. I have to prove myself. I have to put myself out there. I have to learn as much as possible. And so again, did that. That turned into them reaching back out to me and saying, hey, we have a full-time opportunity. We want you to stay with us. And has led now to almost 3 years full-time with them. So my path, I always joke and say, is kind of cheesy and kind of boring because I've only ever known Peak, but
Mhm.
Peak was where I belonged and where I felt valued from the beginning.
Right.
That's all that mattered to me. I never cared about having like the Cowboys or the stars on my chest. I didn't care about having a logo or a brand. Like I want to be somewhere where I was going to impact something and I was going to be treated like a person and not a number. And Peak has always been that for me. So even though it's always been Peak, it's been the right path since the start. I'm not looking to change from that anytime soon.
Yeah, no, hey, yeah, and that's I guess that's what everyone looks for, right? Is to kind of feel like, hey, we're making like I'm making a difference, we're making a difference as a whole. And I think going like the work you did, right? The kind of the groundwork you laid is important for the listeners and viewers, and I guess myself and yourself as we continue our careers, but it's kind of putting that action forth, and I'm sure some of those maybe networking fairs and career fairs were uncomfortable, possibly. I'm not sure if you're like a super people person or whatnot, but for a lot of people, that's they're not super thrilled on going and meeting random people and whatnot. But a lot of
Yeah.
the times there's a bunch of people in there that aren't thrilled being there either. And so you kind of just pick their brain and find, the right people and connections. And I think that's kind of, especially, in the undergrad kind of ranks, that's vital as you're moving forward in your career going forward. So then I guess as you were networking rather, was it on like LinkedIn, or are you just looking at people's email kind of in the beginning, or how was that working out?
Yeah, it was a mix of like going on Google and typing sports teams in
Yeah,
Dallas. And like obviously the most of them wherever you are, but it was then going on their staff directory and saying, oh, well, this person's the director of sales. Like, what do they do? Let me email
right,
them. It was a mixture of that, kind of doing your cold emailing. It was going on LinkedIn and connecting with people and then messaging and saying, hey, this is who I am. I'm a sport management student at Texas A&M Commerce. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do. I'm potentially going to be looking for internships in the future, but really what I want to do is just connect, get to know you, learn about you, and learn as much as possible. Do you have 10, 15 minutes out of your busy schedule to grab coffee, lunch, or do a video call? And then some of it was because of me getting my degree at Commerce and that sport management society is we would have 2 or 3 events a year with professionals
mm,
that come see us and we'd be able to get in front of them and get to know them. They just gave us a lot of opportunities to get in front of professionals, get to sell ourselves, but obviously for those professionals, they're looking for help too. So they get to
right,
meet us. So it was a mixture of kind of doing my own research and that cold emailing side of things, cold LinkedIn messaging, but also getting to meet them in person. Again, going to career fairs that were set up by the DFW area or outside of that, getting to again meet these people in person. So it was a mixture of all of that. That's one thing I think sometimes students, young professionals, entry level professionals don't realize is that it is sometimes as simple as emailing someone and
right,
messaging them on LinkedIn and saying, "Hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm looking for. Just want to get to know you. Here's my resume." Because if you message me that as someone who does hiring, recruiting, and I get your resume, I'm like, wow, like you've had 3, 4 internships, you've done 2 or 3 volunteer opportunities, and you've done a capstone project. I'm looking for this position right now. Like, let's chat. Or hey, we're looking for interns right now. Like, let's chat.
right.
Or I can say, hey, here's the link for everything. Like, go apply. Um, Professionals want you to connect with them because we are probably looking for students or young professionals or entry level professionals to come join us. So it sometimes feels like it's hard to get your first step in the industry, but it all comes down to networking. Like that is the most important piece that was for me and for really
Mhm.
anybody.
Yep, no, and no doubt. And I think it kind of goes back to like it's all about who you know, not what you know type of deal. And that type of I guess concept is key.
Yeah.
I'm sure in other industries as well, but as far as the sports industry, I'm not really, I guess, in other industries, but I would
Yeah.
assume it's the same across the board there. And then I want to dive now in a little bit into peak sports management. So can you give the viewers and listeners kind of like what is just maybe like an overview? What is peak sports management? How does it operate? I know you said it's a third party. Kind of what are you guys involved in?
Yeah. So there's two sides to Peak. One side of Peak, which is our more larger side of our company, is Peak Sports Management. We are a third party multimedia rights company. That's kind of the jokingly the tough way of saying it, the confusing way of saying it, the businessy way of saying it. Essentially what we do is we contract and partner with universities athletic departments across the country. Mainly right now we partner with high impact D2, FCS, FBS, mid-major level athletic departments.
Mhm.
Whenever we do that, we are overtaking that athletic department's corporate partnerships and ticket sales. So the university is fully passing that off to us to handle, maintain, and
Mhm.
eventually grow. By doing that, my job and our job as a company is then after we take that over to hire anywhere from 1 to 3 people that will work for us at that university, selling for us at the university. So if you go to virtually any athletic department across the country, some are in-house, but most of them have a third-party company like us or a competitor of ours. There's someone in an athletic department working. If you're at the University of Texas, there's someone in Austin in the football stadium with a Texas polo on, with Texas business cards, a Texas email, going out to businesses, going out to season ticket holders, and selling Texas athletics as someone that works for that university athletic department, but they work for a Peak Sports Management or a different competitor. And you
Right.
just don't know that because the university has passed it off to that competitor or that
Mhm.
person like us to do that. Um, so we have people that are part of our Peak family, our Peak organization that work for us that are representatives at those universities selling for us and the university through sponsorships and ticket sales. The reason that universities do that is because maybe they don't have the time. Like truthfully, athletics is wearing a lot of different hats. There's a lot of
Mhm.
stuff that goes into their day to day. They either don't have the expertise, maybe they don't have the right person in that role that has the expertise to do that.
Mhm.
So by us coming in and doing that, we can not only hire the right person with the right experience and background to do it. That is fully their job, and that is their full-time responsibility is to manage sponsorships, ticket sales, and raise that revenue and manage it. Um, and then on top of that, like the athletic department doesn't have to worry about it, right? And
Right.
they are still going to be able to grow that revenue because every school we go into, we double, triple, or quadruple the amount of revenue they were doing. So now the school gets a larger source of revenue for their student athletes, for the athletic department as a whole, and be able to grow that while we still get some of that revenue to value our employees and our organization as a whole. And then even on top of that, if you're someone that wants to work in sales, corporate partnerships, tickets, you now get to work for a company doing that on site at a university where you have 50, 60 other people doing your exact same job that you're dealing with on a daily basis that you can lean onto for support and resources. You have a management team that's helping you grow and develop. And as a company, because of how fastly we're growing, adding 5 to 6 schools a year, you now are in a place where if this is what you want to do and you're successful, we always are looking to promote internally. We're always looking to people to move up into leadership roles, managerial roles. So you're not constantly worried about saying, okay, well, what's my next step? Like I'm selling for a school in-house. I don't really know what's next besides maybe taking on like more ops or taking on more donations. Like I just want to do sponsorships. Whereas with a company like Peak, you can do that.
Mhm.
So that's the long spiel on the Peak Sports Management third party side. The sister company of ours is called Peak Events. We run 5 Division I collegiate baseball tournaments called the Frisco Classic, the Carbach Runout Classic. We just added the Sugarland Classic in Houston, Texas, the Las Vegas Classic in Las Vegas, and then the Jacksonville Classic in Jacksonville, Florida. So we run all 5 of those tournaments, basically doing everything besides owning the stadium. We rent out the stadium. We bring in 4 Division I collegiate baseball programs from 4 different conferences to play in a round robin format over a weekend. It's basically a great way for fans to kind of get this cool different conference type of tournament with these baseball programs, these high caliber baseball programs. Like last year we had LSU and they won the national championship. Those kind of caliber of teams. But for the teams, the athletes and for the coaches, they get to play these out of conference opponents
Yep.
that are going to bring a lot of valuable to their schedule, to their players. But now you get to travel. You get to go to these different places, and we treat every team as if it's like a bowl game. They're wine and dined, everything from the hospitality we give them when they stay at the hotel, having little hospitality areas with games and ping pong tables and stuff like that, making sure that they're taken care of and having a good time, providing food, providing meals. The fans and the type of crowds and the ballparks they get to play in are these, AAA and high caliber AA ballparks that they get to play in. So for the fans, it's a really cool spectacle. For the athletes and for the coaches and the teams, it's a really cool experience to get the best feeling of what it's like to be at a College World Series. Our
Yeah.
motto is best outside of Omaha because we believe we're the best tournament outside of Omaha in the College World Series. And you're going to get a feel of that not only from the competition that you're playing, but the environment and how you're treated in the second or third week of the baseball season. So it helps set your players up and sets up your team for future success and not kind of getting starstruck a little bit maybe when you step in that College World Series side. So no, it's a lot of info and a lot of rambling on both sides, but that's just kind of insight into the both sides of Peak.
Yeah, no, very cool. And I kind of came across Peak probably I want to say like a year ago and saw some of the stuff that was going on in the project. So I think it's very very cool kind of company that's been built. And how long has it been up and running? I mean, it's been around for a while or
Yeah, so Peak has been around. Peak Sports Management, our collegiate side, has been for around 11 years. I believe our tournament have been around for about 6 or 7 now, which is awesome because our Peak Sports Management college side started with us having one property and our owners being the ones selling at
yeah,
that property. Now we're at 25 schools, have 50, 60 employees selling across the country. We've expanded not only into sponsorships, but ticket sales. And then our tournament side, again, started with one tournament. This will be the first year we have 5. So it's just really cool to see from the ground up all the challenges and the success that we've had and how it's built us to where we are now. And even then, we're still just a mom and pop company at times. Like we still
yeah.
have so much room to grow, which is so exciting because we get to see that over the next couple of years too.
Yeah, no doubt. No, that's very cool to see, and hopefully the listeners and viewers can kind of see that as well as after they listen to this, and hopefully they can, maybe you can, maybe some of them can apply and look into some positions. And I know, the last time I checked, the company was hiring for a few positions. And I'm sure those are on the website. We can link those, but as a talent acquisition kind of profession that you're in, you do a lot of hiring and whatnot. So what are some things that maybe we'll just start with kind of the initial, maybe first glance of a resume, cover letter, kind of the first glance at a profile. What are you looking for? What stands out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think with every resume, it's the first thing is experience, right? I think one sports is kind of its own niche in itself. Everyone loves sports, but how much do you know about the sport industry and the business side of it? Someone can say, "Oh, I love sports," but what do you know about selling ticket sales or selling sponsorships or marketing sports? Like it's very different than being an avid fan of that and knowing the
Yep.
teams and being very involved with that and knowing the actual business side. But I think for us, being in sponsorships and ticket sales on our Peak Sports Management side, again, is another niche. Sales is not for everybody. You can be really good at sales and absolutely hate it. You can be horrible at sales and love it. And sales is very up and down at times.
Mhm.
It's a grind, like it is. And then you throw sports into that, and you're working sometimes some afternoons, working some back-to-back men's and women's basketball games, some volleyball games. You work 5 Saturdays in the fall, working football games.
Yep.
That is just, it's a grind, but it's what we love. And if that's your passion, you don't even care about that. So not only with being in sports and being a niche in sales and connecting that to the experience pieces, when you're hiring in sales, like not everyone knows that they want to do that again. And someone might say, "Oh, I want to do this." And it's like, "Well, hey, have you ever made a cold call?" It's like, "Oh,
Mhm.
well, no, not really." It's like, "Okay, well, that can be challenging. Like you have
Yeah.
to get out of your comfort zone. Sometimes you get no's, sometimes you get yeses. It's very up and down." So from a resume perspective, one, it's the experience, especially for us. What's your involvement with sales? What's your involvement on campus? If you're an entry-level professional student trying to get that first job, what's your involvement on campus? How are you involved with your degree? Are you just working a part-time job on the side, and what skills do you get from that? Or are you also involved in other things?
Mhm.
What internship have you done? Internships is kind of that golden word for entry-level young professionals whenever we look to hire for entry-level positions. I think it's also location sometimes plays a factor. We're dealing with high impact D2, FCS, FBS caliber programs. Some are in like Portland, some are in the heart of like Massachusetts or in Florida or in Texas and San Antonio. But we do have some smaller locations like in Pittsburgh, Kansas or Midland, Odessa, Texas. Those are some small towns. So if you don't know anything about that location, you don't have any connection to that, we got to help you kind of paint a picture. But if you do, that helps you kind of put yourself out there.
Right.
So I think some of the biggest things with the resume is one, experience. What does your degree path look like? What is your potential connection to an area of the job that we're applying for? But truthfully, from that point on, the main focal point on where we figure out if someone is either qualified or makes sense for a role is really the interview. That's where everything kind of opens up because the resume is just so much. Because I don't know you, I don't know your personality, I don't know your background. Your resume could say, "Hey, you did a sales internship," but I don't know what everything went into that.
Yeah.
So I'm very much more of a person of, let's have a conversation, let's figure it out from there. And I'm not a huge resume critique person. If you have the experience, you have the experience. I don't care if your resume is like blue or yellow or green.
Yeah, yeah, and then I guess the next kind of follow-up to that would be, as you touched on, the actual interview process, whether it's, I guess nowadays Zoom, maybe face-to-face phone interview. I guess I'm assuming most people would prefer face-to-face and Zoom phone interview. Like you could probably kind of squeak by with, having your pen and paper of answers or something like that. So when you're actually doing those interviews, is it like the interpersonal skills? Is it the communication? Is it what's something that will set someone like the listeners, viewers, when they're going in for the interviews, what's going to set them apart? Like maybe I've heard I've heard some people say like go in with like already predetermined answers, like know exactly what you're going to say. But then I've also heard like don't sound like a robot. So I feel
Yeah.
like it's kind of like there's a few different avenues you could take. So I was just curious on, I guess, your thought. And obviously this isn't like straight from the peak and how to get hired there. We're just opinions here,
Yeah.
just to make that clear. Okay.
Yeah. Well, one, I think every organization has a different hiring process. When I was trying to get my first internship, my first interview was with an HR specialist, and they asked me a question that would mute and then wouldn't respond to my answer, but then would just unmute, ask the next question. It was very, very robotic. It was very awkward. Whereas my next interview was me with three other people, and again, it was robotic, and they would just ask questions and then like mute. Our approach is whenever I'm talking to someone, it's just a conversation
Mhm.
because if you're having this robotic kind of interview, like that person's going to be nervous, right? If they
Right.
never interviewed before, I believe the hiring person, the interviewer's job to make someone comfortable and get the best out of them in an interview. So first and foremost, most of my interviews when I do it is very just conversational, getting to know
Mhm.
them. Obviously going back on what they said and just trying to have a conversation, have them be as comfortable as possible because that's how that sales process is going to be for us. So, um, a lot of times the kind of the do's and don'ts can vary. I typically say when it comes to entry level professionals, it's a lot easier to make yourself look unprepared and not look good in an interview than it is
Mhm.
to look good.
Right.
Um, so most of the time, there's not a lot of don'ts in interviews. It's more do's. Like, please do this because I see a lot of people that don't do that. Um, some of the don'ts sometimes, especially if you're on the phone, if you're on a video call, make sure you're in a quiet area. Don't take an interview while you're driving your car. Don't be in a lunchroom or a library. Like, be in a quiet area. If you can't, tell me. I would much rather you tell me, "Hey, Grayson, I can't be in a quiet area for our interview. Would love to reschedule so I can value your time." I would
Right.
much rather have you do that, move it to the next day, than get on this call and I'm like this guy's taking, this guy or girl's taking a call in a lunchroom. Like, you just kind of feel like this is just a phone call. They're not really taking it serious. Um, and the rest of that is kind of like more dues, but the first do I always say is like prepare. And that's
Mhm.
sounds like the most obvious thing like any person can say when it comes to interview, but you will be surprised how many people come in and don't know how to answer basic interview questions when you can Google it and practice it in front of a mirror. And
Right.
there's nothing wrong, like you said, with preparing answers. But it's not necessarily, you shouldn't be looking at a piece of paper, reading it off. It should be more of, hey,
Yeah.
when someone asks me this, you can regurgitate it because you've practiced it and you
Right.
have that conversational skills. Um, and that preparation side comes from one, knowing your resume and yourself, how to answer questions to sell yourself.
Mhm.
Someone can tell me that they've done a sales internship, but not a lot of people will tell me, "Hey, I did a sales internship where I made 100 cold calls over a week. I worked fulfillment and activation, helping with signage, hospitality, dealing with partners, helping doing proof of fulfillment with getting clips of signage and video board ads and infield promos, helping out with suites." Like, that's very, very different. That takes you from, "Hey, I did sales," and like, I don't know if you cold called a prospect, to now, "Hey, you basically just did half of the job that we're applying for."
Yeah.
Um, Preparation on the organization and where you're applying. I can't tell you how many times I ask people, my first three questions are, what interests you in the job? What do you know about Peak? And what do you know about the place you're applying for? And there will be times where all three, someone will say, well, I'm in the job market right now and I really enjoy this part of the industry, but I'm looking for a job right now. And basically they told me I'm applying to apply, which is
Right.
perfectly fine. If you need a job, that's understandable. But then I say, what do you know about Peak? Oh, I don't know anything. I'd love to learn more. Google us, man. Like
Not that it's
read
not ideal.
something off our website. It's like show me that you tried. Even if you say, hey, I did research, I see that you're working with these schools, X, Y, and Z. It says on your website, your mission statement is this. I kind of get it, but I don't fully understand. Can you help? Okay, you tried. What do you know about the location you're applying for? Especially if someone's moving out of state. They're like, oh, I don't really know. It's like, so you're going to apply for a job to move across the country to a place you know nothing about. So most of the time, the do's are just like, just prepare, do your due diligence, because you may look at the job, you may look at us as a company, you may look at the location and say, I don't want to move to Portland, Oregon, or San Antonio, Texas, or Boston, Massachusetts. Like, I don't want to move to any of these places. Um, hey, the job is really focused on sales. I don't really feel comfortable with that. I don't really think that's something I want to do. It may help you, but it helps me because it shows that you care. You care about the job, you care about the company. You're not just applying to apply.
Right.
And I can keep rambling about do's and don'ts like forever. Like that's one of my bread and butters is the do's and don'ts of hiring and how to help students. But really, it truly is as simple as like preparation, learning how to sell yourself, how to have a conversation, and just doing your due diligence when it comes to getting ready for that. Treat it like a professional interview. Don't just go into it with a conversation. Don't wing it. Like that's one of the worst things you can do, because with someone like myself who's gone through, I don't know, maybe like 500 to 1,000 interviews, it's so easy to pick up on. It's so easy to pick up on.
Yeah, no doubt. And I guess that's I guess just backtracking. I think that's how I actually came across your profile was, as you said, kind of your bread and butter is interview do's and don'ts and whatnot. So I was curious as I guess just as just a professional in general, have you been looking into different platforms such as like LinkedIn? I don't know, maybe like Twitter or something, but is LinkedIn kind of the best place for you, in your opinion, to kind of maybe like promote yourself, the company, the industry all in one?
Yeah, I think so, because I mean, LinkedIn is like the business Facebook, right?
Yeah.
Like when you go see a really cool, when you travel and go to a different country, when you go to like a sporting event, when you have a lunch at a really cool place, you get a really pretty burger. Like, what are you going to do? You're going to post on Instagram, you're going to post on Twitter, you're going to post on Facebook because you want people to see it. You want to brag
Mhm.
about it, right? LinkedIn is one of the few places that we want to see you brag about the opportunities you've had in your professional career, the success
Mhm.
you've had in your professional career. Sometimes you post on Facebook, people are like, oh, wow, this guy is like really prideful. Like he's just always bragging about himself. Like that's kind of weird. Like, you get it. You have a cool job. Whereas on LinkedIn, people like myself want to see that. I want to see
Mhm.
where you're at in your career, what you're doing. I want to be told, hey, look at me. I'm someone that's potentially hireable. Um, and LinkedIn's also a great place where it's not awkward to connect with somebody.
Yeah.
Like if you want to go work for the Dallas Cowboys, and you connect with someone on Instagram, it's kind of weird to message them on Instagram and be like, "Hey, we chat." You're like, "That's kind of weird. I don't know you." Whereas LinkedIn, it's like, "Oh, hey, you work in the same industry as me. I would love to chat. Let's talk a little bit." So LinkedIn's a great place to not only create your brand and sell yourself, but also connect with people in the
Mhm.
industry that you want to work with, because it kind of opens that door because they do it themselves, and it helps you kind of connect with more people. And again, it not be really awkward. Like that's what LinkedIn is so awesome about, is having that platform to do that, sell yourself, connect, and kind of develop your career as a whole.
Yeah, no, I'm with that. And I love the way you kind of explained how it would be awkward to connect with someone on Instagram that you found, but it's so true. Like LinkedIn, if I see someone, it's like, oh, sports industry, just connect right away. Like I don't
Yeah.
really even, I mean, I look out the profile, but it's not like I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
maybe not. It's just instantly. So I think that's, for listeners and viewers especially, it's like I like that part as well, is to kind of sell yourself. And it doesn't have to be like, hey, I mean, maybe I wouldn't say like, hey, I made X amount of dollars this month or whatever. That might be a little too much.
Yep.
But hey, this is maybe I did this project or I worked on this group or, type of, projects and things like that, I think would be cool. And it's to promote yourself, like you said, to make yourself hireable.
Yeah.
Maybe if you're in a job now, like, the chances of you being in that same job in 5, 10 years is probably not extremely likely. So you're always maybe not looking for a job,
Yeah.
but just kind of putting yourself out there, I don't think can ever hurt, is my
No.
opinion.
Yeah. The best, I believe, if you utilize LinkedIn in your network correctly, and networking, every professional will say this, every professional will like beat this into your brain. Networking is the lifeblood of our industry.
Hmm.
Um, the way that you know that you're good at that is when someone calls you about a job and you don't have to
Hmm.
apply. Um, And it's not necessarily the sense of like, oh, you're looking, but it's the fact that someone's like, hey, I know you well enough and I've seen what you've done well enough to know that you would be a great fit for here. And that's how you elevate your career. That's how you get more opportunities, and that's how you grow.
Yeah, no, that's beautifully put. And then that kind of leads me kind of to kind of close here. But as you, or as I guess we go off and our separate ways here, and the listeners and viewers have listened to this episode, what's something that you would, kind of like the parting advice, so to
Yeah.
speak? Like the floor is yours. What's your lasting impression if you were to be talking to a group of 100, 200 people right now?
Yeah, I'll say two things. So one, never think that you're bigger than something else. Never
Mm.
think that anything is beneath you. If you go to a minor league baseball game, the GM, the director of ticket sales is going to be picking up trash. They're going to be pulling tarp. They're going to be making cold calls. They're going to be sending cold emails. Like the people that are the most successful in our industry are the ones that look at the small stuff and value that. The people that don't take the time and effort to value the small things are the ones that are really going to fall behind, and they're going to think they don't ever mess up and they're too good for this or too good for that. But really, the ones that are successful, the ones that build and mold their craft from the beginning, and it starts with the small stuff. So that's the first thing. And I cannot push that enough to people that do internships. Like if you think, oh, I'm making cold calls, I'm pulling tarp, I'm picking up trash, like I got to do this, I got to do that. Like that's so interny. It's like, well, the guy that's making X amount of dollars, 60, 100 grand a year, is doing the same thing. So why is he complaining? Um, the last thing I'll add that our owner, Ryan Holloway, says all the time is find the thing that gives you the spark in the belly.
Mm.
Find what you're passionate about and follow that. Uh, you don't want to be in an industry or a place where you're just constantly chasing the bag. You're trying to get money. Money's all that's important. If money's important to you, like do it. But you're going to be happiest when you find a job and you don't worry about the money, and you find a job that you're passionate about, that you want to put your time and effort into. Because say you jump into an entry level role in sports, like you're not going to be making 50, 60, 100 grand a year. Like that's just not sports. You might have to start
Right.
from the bottom. But if you're passionate about it and you want to exceed at it, the money will come because you're going to be putting all of your effort into that job. You're going to be more successful at it. You're going to be better at it. And you're going to care more about it. You're going to be more passionate about it. So find your spark in the belly. Find what makes you passionate, because that's where you're going to succeed. And then ultimately, like the money will come.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I feel that. And I love the advice there, and kind of follow your passion, dreams, and like you're saying. And so, thanks for joining us today, Grayson. And
Yeah.
that concludes, another episode of the Constant Sports Podcast. And special shout out to you, Grayson, as join us today, sharing your experiences and knowledge with the listeners and viewers. And for all those out there, you can find this episode on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, I guess anywhere you get your podcasts. And like I said, Grayson, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. And there's a bunch of spots in there where I want to go back and listen to and dive into. But that concludes this episode. So thanks everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.